You're listening to IHC's podcast. Today's topic is Culture is Medicine. Welcome to the IHC podcast, where culture meets community. I am your host, Marissa Hemstreet, and I'm from the Canyoncito Band of Navajos. I'm also your communications coordinator from the Indian Health Center of Santa Clara Valley, where we offer medical, dental, counseling, WIC, and prevention services to over 23,000 patients, specializing in the unique healthcare needs of American Indians and Alaska Natives. And today, we're here speaking with
Vincent Black Hawk Aamodt.
Well, thank you for joining us today, Vincent. Would you like to share your name, your tribal information?
Yeah, so Vincent Black Hawk Aamodt. A lot of people know me by Hawk. It's just easier to say that. Blackfoot Lakota and Mexican descendants, and yeah, so happy to be here today. This is exciting and always inspiring and motivated to talk about the culture and the youth.
Yeah, well, thank you for making the time to be a part of the podcast and just share with us a little bit about what you do at IHC. So, what technically is your role with us?
So my role, my title is social media coordinator. And so I was just brought on to kind of oversee with the Youth Suicide Prevention Grant, and to kind of oversee the content creation for that, and just creating an overall campaign and work that's going to benefit and help the youth in regards to the youth suicide prevention.
Awesome. Well, what is it like to work in your profession?
It's good. So my background is filmmaking, and so I come from a filmmaker's background, and I've known Michael Duran over in prevention services for, I don't know, I want to say maybe 20 years, maybe less, but it's been a long time. And he and I have worked together off and on in different things, and just on little small projects. But I've been going over there for ceremonies, for events, for sweats. I've been participating in that with the group over there for many, many years. So and then I've done documentary films. I did a mini documentary for Michael Duran and the group over there called Culture is Prevention, which was just documenting kind of what they were doing and how they were using culture to build a community, for outreach, and really just to teach the youth about who they are, and especially in an urban setting, to have something here for them in place that they could feel connected to and feel as if they have a community and a family here in what we all know is a pretty crazy area here in California, Northern California, and you've got all these tech companies and being in the city and the amount of people here and the traffic. We were just talking about that earlier, so I think it's important for an organization like this to have a strong presence and to be out there for people that may not be aware of it, or are, and feel comfortable coming and participating at events and ceremony. So for me, being a part of that is just, it's exciting, it's motivating, and most of all, it just feels like you're helping out in a good way for the community.
I'm glad that you find so much joy in the work that you do, and that you've been in the media industry for a while. And I'm happy that you're finding continued purpose in the work that you do. And it sounds like you're really passionate about it.
Yeah, and and before this, I did a documentary film called The Ghostwriters, and again, that was a passion project, a project that I just said, hey, I want to do this, and it was it's on the Bigfoot Memorial Ride that they do back in Pine Ridge, South Dakota, in the wintertime, and it's to honor the ancestors who were massacred at Wounded Knee by the 7th Cavalry in December of 1890. So what's nice is the ride has kind of transformed into more of a what they call the future generation riders. And it's really about the youth and teaching them how to be the future leaders. So I felt that was a great story. So I wanted to document that, tell that story, not only about the history of why this ride is going on and how it got started, but what it's become and why it's so important now out there. And again, working with the youth, and the ride is all about the youth and teaching the youth and showing them their strength, their resilience, their culture, and just really like when they finish this, it's a 2-week ride in the middle of winter.
Mm-hmm.
So it's blizzards. They're on horseback and they're going over 250 miles. So the long days of riding out in the open, and out there in South Dakota, it can get really cold.
Mm-hmm.
So when they finish this ride, they really have this sense of accomplishment, and they've done something that's a very hard thing to do. And some of these kids, they're 8, 9, 10 years old, and teenagers as well, and where they could just be home, sitting around doing nothing, right? Being in a warm house or whatever, or going out and causing problems, right? But they choose to go out there and do this ride, and then you camp out as well, so
Mm-hmm.
you stay out the whole time. So so I wanted to document that, and so I feel like, any chance I can get, working with youth and Native youth, I think it's really important, and I get a lot of. I just get inspired by it, and I really enjoy doing it. And when this opportunity came up with Michael and his group to come in and work with this grant for youth suicide prevention,
Mm-hmm.
I was really like, yeah, Michael, like I'd love to do it, and let me bring my experience as a filmmaker, as a educator. I've taught in the university level, and then also on another thing which I think is really brings a lot as well is I do a lot of youth baseball coaching.
Mm-hmm.
So I really have a good grasp and comfortableness working around youth.
Mm-hmm.
And so I just bring all of that experience into this role.
I'm glad. You're full package.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, today we brought you here because May is both Mental Health Awareness Month and the Missing and Murdered Indigenous Peoples Awareness Month, MMIP. And that's a movement that demands the end of violence against Native women, girls, and Two-Spirit. And so a common representation of that is a red hand over the mouth. That's become a symbol of the growing movement. And it stands for all the missing relatives whose voices are not heard. It stands for the silence of the media and law enforcement in the midst of this crisis. And it stands for the oppression and subjugation of Native women who are now rising up to say #NoMoreStolenSisters. And while we stand together against this violence, it is important for us to also work towards prevention. And so that's why we've invited you here today to talk about the importance of youth suicide prevention. But before we delve into that, I would like to provide a trigger warning. We will be discussing topics such as suicidal ideation, suicidal thoughts, and prevention, as well as mental health struggles. And so if any of these topics are triggering to you, listener discretion is advised, and you can check in our description of this episode for resources and links for you to check into if you are struggling with these mental health issues or you have a family or friend who is. Thank you. So, I understand that you work at the Prevention Services Department, and that is actually within the IHC Counseling Department. And so can you share a little bit about the YSP grant?
Yeah, so it's a grant where, like I said, part of it allowed me to come aboard to work with the team and to really start creating awareness about this subject. But also not just that, but also putting out there that there's a solution. And so within that grant and working with it, there's a campaign, there's a bigger campaign with the California State Department of Health, and there's a bigger campaign that's called Never a Bother. Mm-hmm. So that's what we're working with right now in collaboration with them. And so everything that we're doing right now ties back to never a bother, meaning like if you ever feel like, oh man, I'm not feeling good today, or I'm struggling with this today, but I don't want to go talk to this person. I don't want to bother this person again. I don't want to, And what we're trying to reinforce is that no, feel like you can always talk to somebody. And that you should never feel like you're bothering anybody. When you're struggling, no matter how big or how little, if you're struggling, you should never feel like you don't have someone to talk to. So we want to reinforce that within the community here and start creating content that's going to educate young people on really how to understand how to get help. Because I think that's a big challenge, because I think a lot of people feel these emotions and these struggles and have these issues that they're dealing with, but they don't know how to find help for it. So a lot of times they just keep it to themselves, right?
Internalize it.
Yeah, exactly. And we all know that can be much worse. And then people will say, "Oh, we didn't know that this person was struggling, or that they were going through this, or that they needed help," because they never said anything. So really, with this campaign, what we want to do is take those words, "never a bother," and just expand on that. And really, that's what the campaign is going to be based around. And what's great is we've already got some posts out there. And we're using our youth council here at the IHC to be in, because a lot of it we want to be peer-to-peer, right? So we just feel like messaging when it's peer-to-peer, I think, can be a lot more impactful and carry more weight with it. It's not like an adult's telling a youth, like, do this, it just feels better when it's a peer, and it's like, okay, they get it. So we're using the youth council leaders in the content, and then I'm going to be training them so that they're going to start creating their own content for this as well. So with the campaign just kicked off, so right now I'm kind of overseeing the content creation, but eventually what we're going to do is just kind of like give them a chunk of it and say, okay, now you guys go out and you create some stuff. You come up with the concept. You shoot it, you edit it, and the whole package.
Nice.
So, and that just gets them involved, right? Which is great, and gets them that experience as well.
That's good. And this is the youth, who are attending, the workshops and things?
Yeah, so the Youth Leadership Council that's here at the IHC, and they've got, it's a handful of young kids. I think it's about 8 or 9 of them.
Nice.
Yeah, so I'm looking forward to more interaction with them. We just did a quick little video, and we used there's that trend that's been going on. We just call it the "of course" trend.
Oh yes, yeah.
So it's like I do this, so of course I have this, right? So we had the youth talk about that they're on the youth council, and so it says, I'm part of my youth council leadership. Of course, we're here for each other. So it's just little messages like that. And it came out really nice, and they did a great job. And some of them can be camera shy.
Oh, of course.
Yeah. So, but they did a great job. So, and I told them more to come. So, be ready to keep being on camera.
I'm excited to see what that looks like.
Yeah, it was great. It was great. I edited that one, so we just finished it, and I think we should be posting it probably today.
Cool. So, another question for you would be, how, in your opinion, do you think suicide has impacted the American Indian Alaska Native community?
Well, it's impacted our communities very, very much, especially again, just a lot of my experience is back in the Pine Ridge Reservation. And I just saw a documentary film. I didn't do it, but it was really well done. And I've been speaking with the filmmaker about it. And he just did this really interesting film about, youth suicide on the Pine Ridge Reservation. And really one of the things that it brought up was just the lack of any kind of services, any kind of mental health services. They're just non-existent. And, when a youth out there would struggle and they'd send them off the reservation to some other place in another state, and then they'd keep them there for a week to get help, but then that would it. Then they'd send them back, and then there was no follow-up. So really it was just, they just weren't. And in that case, situations like that can make it even worse, because now they are all alone. So So the youth suicide rate out there is just extremely high. It's just, it's my film, which is, some years old now, but we talk about it too, and the youth suicide rate in the Pine Ridge Reservation is the worst in all of the United States.
Mm-hmm.
So, and I know they have the same thing in a lot of other communities, and I know there was, I've read some stuff about the Alaskan communities, and I think, in the Native communities, it's a hard thing because I think, there's, first off, they've all got a trauma,
Mm-hmm.
and we know that, and we know it's in you. It's born into you. It's in the blood.
Mm-hmm.
This trauma, and they might not even know it's there, right? So they didn't even know what's going on with them and why they're feeling this way.
Mm-hmm.
And then, kind of in certain reservations, just kind of being out there where you're kind of feeling like, what's there to do out here, right? And
Mm-hmm.
if you didn't have good people around you, like you can be very easily going down the wrong path, and then that's going to lead to a lot of poor choices, and which may lead to feeling really not good about yourself and feeling like you're just not worthy. You're not worth anything, and that's I think what eventually happens. They just feel like, well, what's the point?
Mm-hmm.
I'm just out here with nothing to do, nobody cares, and I just don't feel like I'm worth it.
Mm-hmm.
So being isolated like that just obviously does not help. So I think, these campaigns hopefully can reach those areas to at least kind of make them feel like, hey, I'm not the only one that's struggling with this.
Yeah.
And that if they can connect with people, and I feel like there's a lot of things that social media, a lot of problems that social media has caused,
Mm-hmm.
But in some cases, there are some good benefits to social media, and social media being able to reach out, globally, obviously, but being able to reach out to other communities, which may make them feel like, hey, okay, like somebody gets it. So I think the Native communities, but all in all, it's a real issue out there right now.
Yeah, in my previous role as a fitness coordinator with the Indian Health Center, I would attend these conferences called the Native American Fitness Council, and each day, they were for a specific training, and one of the trainings that they do talk about the subject with is with the Native Youth Fitness Leader, and so, it's a training for fitness, and then so you wouldn't think that any talk about suicide would have a place at those types of events. But it was the founder and the co-founder of the company, John Bleversnitch. I don't always pronounce his last name correctly, so I do apologize, John. It's John B. And his other coworker, Brian Laban. I pronounced his name correctly. He's from Hopi. And they would talk about working with these Native youth, and when we work with them to be encouraging, especially when they're not doing something correctly in regards to an exercise or a sport, because it takes courage for them to even, get out of their comfort zone and do that, and that these children are dealing with things at home, and maybe that moment where they come to you all for working out and playing a game, that might be the only bit of time that they might get to be a child, because at home they might have to be a caretaker, because on different reservations and even in the cities, Native families can struggle and might deal with addiction or depression, suicidal ideation, just thinking about suicide. And it might not just be the child thinking that way, it might be their parent or guardian also feeling that way, and that has other impacts on the children. And so they really encouraged us to not negatively critique any of the youth because of these things that are going on. And I just remember John saying his speech, and he started crying because he was talking about they had just finished a training in Alaska, and there was a kid who was lighting up the one day that they were there, and then the next day he was like, "Oh, where's so-and-so?" And one of the folks at the training was saying, "Well, you're not able to attend today. He's okay, but his mom committed suicide last night, and and just seeing that reality play out right in front of him was really hard for John. And because in his cultural background, I think he's German, and so he doesn't like exactly understand just how big suicide is on Native reservations and things like that. And he told us to hold space for folks who have experienced a suicide in their family. And it wasn't until that moment that I actually thought about my own experience. My mom had committed suicide in 2017. I don't mean to get teary-eyed. And it affects people past yourself, you know, and I'm happy that her pain is over. And that I know she struggled with her mental health for so long, but these things affect not just you, but it affects your immediate family. It affects people who know and love your immediate family. And I know for a time after my mom passed, I was not the nicest person because I was grieving. And I just saw how it extended beyond her to me, to my family, to my friends. And it took time to heal and know that it wasn't because of any one specific in the family. Like you were saying earlier, it's trauma.
Yeah.
And just like working through that.
And that's the thing is, especially with like people that don't really understand, like in the Native communities, the historical trauma is a real thing, you know. So I'm sorry to hear that you went through that.
No, thank you.
And because that is devastating, and it does tear apart a family, you know. And so, you know, it's important work, and especially for the youth, because I just, for me, it's like I feel like every kid should and deserves to have just a great childhood, whatever that means, you know, not defining that in any specific way, but it's like you're a kid. You should be able to enjoy being a kid, you know, and these struggles take that away, you know, these issues, these pains, you know, they wipe that away. And so there's these kids that either themselves are going through this, or like with you, they have a family member going through this, and it's hard, you know, and you know, so that's why I just think, you know, whatever help people can offer, and like myself and coming aboard here, it's just, to me, this is like work that's meaningful, and hopefully work that'll make an impression and leave a lasting hope. And so, like I said, I'm really looking forward to, you know, being more integrated with our youth council here, and helping to inspire them and guide them, because they may know somebody, you know, that needs this, and maybe they can help this person by knowing, hey, this or that, you know. And that's one thing with the community here with IHC, you know, all the events, all the ceremonies that they offer to the community are so important, you know, because that's the other part of it is with the Native people is having the community, having the culture. Is once you get that culture in you, it's so strong, and it can lift a person out of these things. Yeah. You know, and so the events that happen, you know, we just this past weekend they did an event for the veterans, and then they also did the day before that, we brought in some healers from Mexico, and they did a training for us and a healing session with plants, and they talked all about the plants, and then went through it, and then kind of taught us, like, you know, how you do these things, and it's a cleansing, you know, so they cleansed us, which was great. And it was interesting because when I walked into the room where they had laid out all the plants and everything, and I sort of watched them do it in the morning, but once it was all done, then you kind of walked in, it's like you could feel that energy, you know, just from those plants just being laid out in the way that they did it, and not just how they did it, but the way that they did it, in the good way. And I could, you could just feel it. And it was really overwhelming.
Mm-hmm.
And it was just like, oh my gosh, like this is so powerful. And it does get to you. It gets to you, and you do get emotional. And I think, when you're open and understanding to that kind of healing,
Mm-hmm.
It is a very emotional thing. Because, it's like they say, like in many of the native cultures, and it's like they say, like, we have the wiping of the tears ceremony, but you're supposed to mourn and cry for those 4 years, and that's a prayer,
Mm-hmm.
and so in the native culture, crying is a prayer.
Mm-hmm.
It's not a sign of weakness. It's not like, oh, get yourself together, what's going on, it's a prayer. And so, but in, today's society, right, the way everyone's brought up is like, especially for men, it's like, well, you don't cry because that's a sign of weakness,
Mm-hmm.
right? But I'm just telling you, all you men, all you native guys out there, cry. It's okay.
Let it out.
It's a prayer. It's not a weakness. It's a strength. So that event like that, and then we had a sweat, and some guys came out from Pine Ridge. They did a wiping of the tears, and then we ran a sweat that night. So it was great. It was a really strong ceremony,
Mm-hmm.
and some teams from Seattle came down, from Oakland, from Santa Barbara. So there were other Indian health centers. The Native American Health Center up in Oakland.
Mm-hmm.
So there was other groups there, and it was great just for all of us to get together and share ideas
Mm-hmm.
and collaborate and figure out and just opening up a discussion to like, how can we keep this collaboration going, and how can we, keep this work going, but also how can we make it all like consistent and more of like one message,
Mm-hmm.
So it was a really good 3 days of meetings and trainings and ceremonies.
I'm glad. And that sounds like, it was really impactful on you because of the, like you were saying, with the plants and just learning the healing properties of plants and even physically feeling it. And like you were saying, in a good way. And just the Indian Health Center and other urban Indian health centers, as well as like working with different tribal areas, these ideas are typically embraced of, we do want to prevent youth suicide in general. And what are the ways that we can work together to make sure that these people who are struggling and dealing with depression and so on and so forth, how do they seek help? And what are ways that we can approach that problem from a cultural perspective and mental health problem perspective? And so I think working with the Indian Health Center, just like you, I had a really positive experience, especially when I went through what I did in 2017, because I've been with Indian Health Center since 2014. It's been a minute.
Mm-hmm.
And I just remember the amount of overwhelming support that I received from my coworkers. And it was like I lost one mom, but I felt like I gained like 3 more because the moms from the other departments really came to comfort me and just remind me that, I can take solace in like the memories. And my mom had depression and manic bipolar disorder, so all that fun stuff. And just knowing that when she was doing well and good, that's who she was. It wasn't her disease. That was a part of her, but it wasn't the whole her.
Yeah.
And so I did take solace in that, and I just really appreciated fellow coworkers here at Indian Health Center. I'll shout them out. Loretta Monteros, just the amount of love that you gave me during that time was just amazing. And Adele, what is your last name? Oh, okay. Adele Ariola, you as well at counseling. Yeah. Have you met Adele yet?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, she works in the front office at counseling.
Yeah. Yep.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Both folks just really helped me through that time, especially when I was feeling like a little fragile fetus.
Sure.
I was just,
Yeah,
and
I
they
can
were,
imagine.
Yeah, they were there. And same thing with the current manager at the CWO department, Ronald and Valdez. They were all really instrumental in my healing during that time.
Yeah.
I mean, outside of therapy, of course, but just knowing that I had that support from coworkers too was just amazing.
And that's the thing too, is it's both sides of it, meaning, someone that's struggling and looking for help, and then someone like yourself that's gone through something like that, and also needing the community. And I think, here at the IHC, That's great because, you know, you can unfortunately have to go through something like that, but just knowing that, people stepped up to help you and, like you said, making you feel like, hey, you've gained some more family members here.
Yeah, of
And
course.
yeah, and that's really important, but that's also says a lot about the people that work here.
Yeah. They all have big hearts on their shoulders. We put up that native face, that exterior, the stoic, but we're honestly, it's the sun is in our eyes. We really can't see.
Exactly.
We're not mean mugging to mean mug. One of my other coworkers, or our other coworker, Jessica Danette, she also works at TWO. She's famous for her mug, but she also needs glasses. So when folks see her, they're like, "Why are you mean mugging me?" And she's just like, Who's talking to me?
Let me get my glasses on.
Yeah.
Nice.
So the IHC, very supportive. But what are some of the ways that IHC specifically is working on preventing youth suicide with the Youth Suicide Prevention grant that we received?
Yeah, so like I said, we just started, and so I'm working on a couple of events, and I don't want to get into, because we haven't completely got the green light on them yet, and so they should be good, but I'm working on a couple of events right now. Like I said, we're working on, creating content, social media content and elsewhere as well. And then, like I said, and then just, the ceremonies, the community building and the awareness of like, hey, come sing, come sit at the drum, or even just stand next to it, or come dance, so, and then obviously, the sweat lodges. So I think, having the ceremonies and the cultural events available is such a big thing. And I think, then the next thing is just, what else can we create that's going to help a certain individual? And that's what we're working on right now. Like I said, we just started. I'm still somewhat new here on board, but I'm just looking forward to, ramping it up as we get this thing going.
Nice. I'm glad that, there's things in the works.
They're
brewing in the pot, but we
For
can't
sure.
name them out call them out by name yet. There was another person that I was talking to, and they were trying to talk. They were like, I don't want to speak about my upcoming projects just because I don't want to put them out in the universe if they haven't come to fruition yet. Just don't want to, bad juju on it. So I totally understand that, even though, like you were saying, it's mainly because, like, we just haven't received approval yet. But I also like the idea that we don't want to speak about it until it actually happens. Let it come to fruition.
Yeah,
let
but
it
once
come to us.
once it does happen, then we're gonna lots of messaging will go out.
Of course, yeah. And then
exactly.
I think it's important for, like, the youth to know if they're struggling with any issues, especially our Native youth. That I had spoke to Tamara Chavez. She's a PsyD, a psychiatrist at our counseling department. And she was sharing that for Native folks in the Bay Area, there are no barriers to receiving counseling at IHC for them, especially if you're in the middle of a crisis. They're more than willing to talk to you. If you are non-Native, no worries there. You can also, if you're able to, depending on insurance issues, you can also enroll at IHC's medical department, and they have something there called a warm handoff, where if you are in crisis and you do get to go see your doctor, you can let them know, hey, I'm experiencing these things. I would really like to speak to someone, and they will do a warm handoff to a counselor at our Meridian location. And so those are two ways that you can access it. There's other ways to be referred through the county, but those are the two ones that have less barriers. And for other folks, there's like the suicide prevention hotline and things like that we'll add into the details and description of this episode. So feel free to look at those below if that is something that you need. And just knowing that it's okay to not feel okay. We experience the full range of emotions. It's like a little beautiful emotional rainbow. And that's perfectly normal. Not every day you're going to feel 100% or great. And on those days, maybe rest and take care of yourself. And so, do you have any resources for folks who are struggling with suicidal ideation?
Well, I mean, you just listed, a good amount. Yeah. So, I mean, I would say, reaching out to the Indian Health Center is a great resource, and if you haven't been involved, with anything here, I think people will be pleasantly surprised to see the amount of resources, the amount of people that, will welcome you in and deal with you, on a one-on-one and really strive to help. And I think, just not being, if you're not involved with the community here at IHC, really consider being involved on whatever level, and like I said, just showing up to some of the events. Because again, I really do believe that having some culture, some of your culture, your history in your life, especially if you're struggling, you're not feeling good about yourself, feeling down, these cultural ways are really all about just boosting you up, in a very sort of subtle way. But I really truly believe that, being involved in the events and the cultural stuff will really help in a big way. So that would be my message would be, get involved and let your culture help you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I felt that earlier today, just from what you said about tears. I have trauma with tears, and just how you're saying, tears can be a prayer, and just like reframing that for me was really nice. I was like, oh my goodness, I'm gonna go pray later, and other things like that have been reframed for me, especially like the more that I'm getting in touch with my culture, because I grew up an urban native, city native, so I wasn't born on the reservation. While my family does live there now, and they're giving my youngest brother the res upbringing that nice. I am jelly of. I still appreciate the way I was brought up. But, through the Indian Health Center and just being involved with them for now almost a decade, it's been a minute, yes. That I feel like I've been getting closer and closer to my culture each time. And I'm even more grateful because the community at IHC is very intertribal, so I'm not just learning Navajo ways. I'm learning, other folks and their traditions and their practices, and just appreciating like how different perspectives are to healing. And I've seen how this has impacted my own life, and when I chat with my siblings on the reservation who haven't been exposed to as much culture, even though they're like right there.
Yeah, you'd be surprised.
Yeah, it is isolating on the reservation. So my family's from Tehajli, New Mexico, and it's just 45 minutes away from Albuquerque, but it's still living there. It's not, your neighbors are there, but you might not talk to them all the time. And my family moved there maybe 7 years ago, and my younger brother probably has like 2 friends on the res. And so I could see for the youth how it could be isolating, especially if school is your only place to, chat with friends your age, and then you go back to your house you're probably miles away from wherever your friend lives, and your parents might not always be able to drive you back and forth. Maybe they're working.
Yeah, so. No, that can... and I think, that the pandemic had a big effect on a lot of the younger people, just that isolation, the sort of forced isolation, right, that we all went through. And I think this time that we're in right now is just very different. And I think we all just have to be aware of that and really consider that for the younger ones that like, hey, they went through this isolation period, and then on top of that, if you're on the reservation, it's even more isolation. And how do you feel that time after school? What do you do if there's no activities and there's no one doing anything? But here in the urban setting, it can be just as hard to connect with your culture with all the distractions. Out there, it's like maybe nothing's going on, but then over here, it's almost like there's too much, and there's way too many ways to get into trouble. There's way too many ways to do this. There's way too many ways to feel bad, whether it's you're being bullied or, whatever it may be. You just feel like you don't fit in. And, and that's a challenge here in an urban setting. And so I think even more so, sometimes I feel like, well, on the res, at least the one thing that I think you can kind of always have out there is a connection to nature, right? And a connection to the land. Out here, you're not going to get that. Depending on where you live and what your situation is, you're really not going to get that. And so that's one of the other things that I want to really promote. And I've been talking with, we've got a younger a social media specialist we brought on as well. And she's great, Olivia. And, she had this great idea of taking the youth out for a hike. I'm like, yeah, that's great. Let's do that. Let's get some content for that. And let's really expose our youth leaders to the benefits of connecting with nature. And like when we did that plant thing, right? It's all about nature. And it's so important in an urban setting to be connected to the land, to the nature. And that's something that I do for myself on a regular basis is I love to run. But when I run, I need to do it in like a mountain or a forest or something, right? I can't run on sidewalks or in a city, right? It's just too distracting. It's too dangerous.
Yeah.
And it's just not inspiring. It's just I go out for a little bit. I'm like, oh, I can't do it. So I'd rather drive, if I got to drive 20 minutes or 30 minutes, whatever it is, to a place where I know I can get lost in the nature. So for me, that's what I love to do. And that really keeps me connected back to everything. And I'll stop when I'm out there when there's no one else out there to stop and take it in and have a moment. So exposing our youth council leaders to that and training them about that and explaining to them why that's important, is a good thing. And then they can share that, right? So that's just another thing that we want to bring into that is just connecting back to nature.
The touch grass.
Yeah.
Reminding folks.
Yeah, get off the concrete and get on some dirt.
Yeah, take off your shoes. Go
Right.
go walk around in an area hopefully that doesn't have anything in the grass.
Yeah.
So at IHC, we do believe that culture is medicine. So what does culture is medicine, the phrase, mean to you?
Oh man, that means a lot. But I think it's really when you have culture in you and you really accept it, within your heart in an authentic way. I feel like wherever you go, you can tap into that. Once you get it in you, like you don't have to, say if something happens and you can't get to sweat lodges on a regular basis, right? But if you've got that in you, you can find a way to tap into it. And I think that's, anytime you can tap into your culture, that's a resource and that's a strength, because you may have those days when things don't go your way, when you feel like, hey, this isn't my day. Take a moment, take a breath, and connect back into your culture. Maybe even if you just got some sage, right? Just smudge a little bit, close your eyes, and if you've got your culture in you, it's always going to be with you, no matter where you are. So culture, when you say culture is medicine, it is, and it's a strength. And I always felt like for Native people, it's sort of our superpower, right? It's our culture, the culture, and like you said, intertribal. So learning, like when the people from Mexico came and did the plant healing, right? That's a different culture, but it connects and it intertwines. So whatever your culture is, and whatever, even if you pick up things from other cultures like that, those can go into your heart and your inner being, your inner soul, and you can rely on those, and you can use those as your tools and as your ways to get you through something when you may be feeling, down, or you may be struggling with certain things or certain people, or even if you're just struggling in a traffic jam, right? you can rely on these. You can pull these up and draw from these things and get stronger each day when you have your culture. So I'm a firm believer that culture is medicine.
So thank you all for listening. Some upcoming events that we have are an event that's happening on May 8th at San Jose State University, Women Are Sacred event. And then we also have May 24th, which is our roundtable discussion called From Silence to Action. Thank you so much, Hawk. And you can check our events page at indianhealthcenter.org/events. And all of our events will be listed there. Stay up to date, get the most information there. So thank you again for listening. Don't forget to rate, review, and subscribe. If you like our content, check out our other social media such as YouTube, Facebook, Instagram. Our handle is at IHC San Jose. Thank you.